Okay, so what I wanted to do in this video is I just want to talk about how to start the downswing and compress your irons. It's a topic of conversation that I've had with a lot of my online students recently, and I just thought I'd create a video just to put it together because I'm sure it will help lots of you out as well. Now, the first thing is, before we start talking about the downswing, there's a couple of things that you just need to double check first and foremost, and the big one is, well, probably the posture and also the backswing position. A lot of students that I meet end up getting attracted by videos like this, you know, maybe reaching out for help, and then they're often making some basic mistakes in things like the posture. So in your posture, when you get yourself set up, just make sure that you feel like you're relatively neutral and nice and balanced. And what I mean by this is just avoid any excessive sort of tilting motion as I'm demonstrating here. Equally, if you were now to draw a line vertically through either of my ankle lines, in the backswing we have to make sure two things. One, my head doesn't move outside of that line, and two, that my hips don't move outside of that line. If you're doing one or both of those types of motions, they're unrecoverable. Theoretically, it doesn't matter what you try and do in the downswing position, you are always going to have great difficulty. So before you start delving too much into this, double check your posture, double check your backswing position, and just make sure you've got a nice rotation where you're sort of staying within inside the boundaries of your feet. And that will obviously serve you very well to working on this next stage into the downswing. The focus point really on this video is how do we navigate good rotational and linear motion coming into the downswing. And that basically just means, how do I start the downswing where I'm sort of rotating both my sort of lower body region, my chest, whilst also making sure that I move towards that left-hand side and doing it in a fashion that is going to help me really sort of stay down and compress the golf ball. So there's a couple of things that we're going to need to focus on. I think the first one, which is a real simple drill, which is why these objects are to the side of me, is just to practice. I do this a lot with students. It's quite an easy thing to just kind of work on. You place one alignment stick through your belt loop and then place another one in a bucket if you're going to practice down the range, or if not, do it at home so it's vertically placed. And then when you get yourself set up into your obviously setup position, you want to make sure that the alignment stick that is placed in the bucket behind you, or whatever you end up makeshifting, is in line with the outside part of your lead foot. And all you want to do is just make sure that you can rotate, and hopefully you can hear the way I'm making contact with the alignment stick like so. Now, that would be a good feeling for the sort of rotation as we're coming in towards the downswing, in terms of the sort of necessary amount of rotation. Now, obviously, if you're somebody who kind of moves too much in a sliding fashion, then you're not going to hit that alignment stick. And also, if you were sort of clever enough with it, if you're somebody who kind of hangs on the back foot, you'll probably find that the way that you'd actually miss it as well. That's why I've sort of suggested that's not a bad place for it to go to. But the idea in this exercise is it's mainly due to the rotational motion first and foremost. See what I'm sort of doing here? Now, when you trigger good rotation, a couple of things will happen. The first one that will happen is that your upper part of your leg, as I just demonstrated in that drill, and the pelvis and the chest will start to face towards the target. That's absolutely key, and I'd say for most golfers who are poor ball strikers, that's absolutely something that they don't do. I think with the idea of weight pressure, that's just something you have to think about. If you sort of stood there with your legs slightly flexed and you move your weight from right to left whilst keeping your head still, that's something you're capable of doing. So I think when you're doing that type of drill, sort of start telling yourself to shift the weight in towards your lead foot whilst getting that same feeling of that rotational drill would be really, really beneficial. If you get very good at this, you should start to notice something. Reposition the alignment stick back through my belt loops, and if I sort of take my backswing position here, as I start the downswing, can you see the way that as I trigger this rotation, the way the alignment stick goes down? And that's a big thing. And again, this would be the kind of thing you'd want to be feeling. You don't want to be doing this. Any golfers who move like this, potentially you might be okay hitting some of the longer clubs. Obviously I'm dramatizing it for effect. That would be okay. It would kind of have this effect where the club would drop down, making us hit more up on the ball. But when it comes to compressing, and we want to get the feeling of staying very much over the ball and striking down on it, you really want to see this alignment stick moving downward, okay, in that rotational manner. And if you can do this, this gives us the ability to keep the upper body aligned over the ball. Again, this way, upper body's going to lend itself to being more behind the ball. This way, it's going to be more down and over it. Depending on the type of swing that you have, you probably, I would say again, a lot of students that I have that struggle with ball striking, you will feel like your upper body's very much over the ball. And that's okay, that's a good feeling to have. If I sort of swing back and do the moves that we've already spoke about, move towards the lead side, rotate my body, you see the way that I'm very much, my sort of sternum is very much placed over the golf ball, which is then lending me this ability to, well, make sure I get a good contact and can very much control the low point by ensuring that I move the lower body as demonstrated there. If you were to take these sort of drills and exercises, similar to what I say again to a lot of students, first of all is identify your problem, then maybe work on some of these drills around the house to get a feeling for what is kind of right and wrong. A really good sort of stepping stone then is, rather than just heading to the range and trying to immediately hit shots, what you can do is start making some practice swings and start to be very aware of where your club is actually hitting the ground. Because again, if you're somebody who moves this way, you should notice the way the club is striking much earlier in your stance. If I move where I move my hips more down and around, see the way I have the capability of getting the club to strike where the golf ball would be and keep the club moving through. So it's almost like actually my divot finishes much more in line with my lead ankle. If you can do that, then what that basically means is you're going to have the ability to really control the low point. And my final little tip is, if you're somebody who likes to video your swing, if you can draw a line through that lead ankle, and then at that post impact position, which means just after I've hit the ball, my hands, the club head, sorry, my hands, my lead hip and my shoulder are all in line. What we don't want to do is be something like this. So if you can work on that feeling of moving to that lead side, getting that feeling of moving down into the lead side, and also triggering that feeling of rotating as you're moving down into that lead side, you will notice it will massively improve your chances of getting good ball striking, like I said earlier, as long as you don't have any of those backswing traits. See you soon.